The Wild West has long been romanticized as a land of untamed freedom and rugged determination, where cowboys, outlaws, and pioneers shaped the nation. However, behind the myths of heroism lies a darker reality, one of brutality, inequality, and survival. The truth is captured in rare, unflinching photos that history books often leave out. These images reveal the harsh side of frontier life and showcase moments of violence, tension, and suffering in the Wild West. In the Wild West, prostitution was a widespread and often regulated profession in many frontier towns, particularly in mining camps and bustling towns like Dodge City and Tombstone. As the demand for entertainment and companionship grew in these rough, lawless environments, brothels became essential to the economy. Interestingly, some towns took the step of formally licensing prostitutes and even issued photographic licenses or identification cards for those working in the trade. One of the more unique aspects of this regulation was the requirement for prostitutes to submit photographs as part of their licensing process. These photographs, often taken in the brothel's vicinity, served as a form of identification for the women working there. They also acted as a way to monitor and regulate their activity. The idea behind this practice was to keep track of prostitutes for health and safety, as well as to maintain control over the growing vice industry. In some cases, the photograph was accompanied by a personal description, which made it easier for authorities to identify the women in case of trouble or legal disputes. While photographic licenses may seem unusual to modern sensibilities, they were a way to create a sense of order in the chaotic, expanding frontier society. What happens when rage turns into violence? You get the Rufus Buck Gang, a group of young outlaws who left destruction and death in their wake. Led by Rufus Buck, a man of African American and Creek Indian descent, this gang wanted to send a chilling message. Rufus, angry over settlers encroaching on native lands, formed a crew of petty criminals. These men were young, barely adults, but their ambition was to make their name feared across the Oklahoma and Arkansas territories. Their spree began in 1895, targeting ranches, shops, and lawmen. They weren't just thieves, they were ruthless, leaving a trail of blood wherever they went. The group's first major crime saw them mortally, wound Deputy Marshal John Garrett. From there, their attacks grew even more brutal, indiscriminately harming settlers and Creek people alike. But their reign was short-lived. After weeks of terrorizing the region, the gang was captured in a combined effort by lawmen and Creek police. They were hauled before Judge Isaac C. Parker, who sentenced them to hang. Their infamous photograph, taken shortly before their execution, captured the intensity of their short lives and violent death. Its raw and grim nature kept it out of most history books. Imagine being a teenager ripped from everything you know and forced into a world completely foreign to you. That was Olive Oatman's reality. Born in 1837 in Illinois, Olive was just 14 when her family was ambushed while traveling through Arizona. Native Americans killed her parents and 4 of her siblings in a horrifying attack, leaving Olive and her younger sister Marianne to face a brutal new chapter as captives. The 2 girls were taken by their attackers and later handed over to the Mojave tribe, where their lives changed forever. The Mojave people tattooed Olive's chin with intricate patterns, a mark of tribal identity. It wasn't just decoration, it symbolized her place among them. Sadly, tragedy struck again when Marianne succumbed to starvation within a year, leaving Olive to navigate this new life alone. Olive eventually returned to society after 5 years in captivity. Still, the tattoo remained a visible reminder of her time with the Mojave. Her image sparked curiosity, and some saw her as a symbol of resilience. In contrast, others viewed her tattoo with discomfort and suspicion. These photos of Olive Oatman, with her piercing gaze and distinctive tattoo were never truly banned. But their unsettling nature and the stories they told were enough to keep them out of the mainstream history books. Meet Seth Kinman, a man who turned the violence of the Wild West into something grotesquely tangible. Kinman wasn't just a hunter. He was a collector of what he hunted, and his trophies were the stuff of nightmares. Known for killing grizzly bears and Native Americans during the gold rush, Kinman used the remains of his victims to craft furniture and decorations. One chair is made of grizzly bear parts, and another is adorned with elk antlers. But it didn't stop there. His most disturbing creations featured human remains, which he presented as art to U.S. presidents, including Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson. Kinman's photos, showcasing these grotesque trophies, were too graphic for most people to stomach. These images didn't just represent the brutality of his actions. They highlighted a dark era of indigenous genocide and environmental destruction. Yet, bizarrely, some celebrated Kinman as a symbol of frontier ruggedness. His haunting photos remain a disturbing glimpse into a world where violence was glorified and human life was often devalued. In a world where the average man stood just over 5 feet tall, Ralph Madsen was a giant, literally. Towering at 7 feet 6 inches, Ralph became a Wild West legend, not for his deeds, but simply for his extraordinary size. Born to an average-sized family, Ralph spent most of his life working on a ranch. He was skilled with animals and became known for his gentle demeanor despite his intimidating stature. When World War I broke out, Ralph wanted to serve in the army, but his towering height made him stand out in all the wrong ways. Military officials feared he'd be an easy target and doubted his ability to keep up with others in combat. So Ralph took a different path. With his manager, Sam Houston, he began traveling and performing, drawing crowds amazed by his sheer size. Photographs of Ralph often went viral for their time. One look at him standing among regular-sized men and people couldn't believe their eyes. But these photos, while not outright banned, were seen as curiosities rather than historical artifacts. Ralph's life story was extraordinary, but it didn't fit the narrative of the gritty Wild West most history books wanted to portray. Life as an outlaw in the Wild West often ended in violence, but Thomas Blackjack, Ketchum's death, stands out as particularly horrifying. Born in 1863, Ketchum led a gang that specialized in robbing trains. Their daring, organized, and ruthless traits made them infamous and put Ketchum at the top of law enforcement's most wanted list. But his luck ran out in 1901 during a botched train robbery near Folsom, New Mexico. Ketchum was captured, tried, and sentenced to death by hanging. What happened next was nothing short of a nightmare. When the executioner released the trapdoor, the noose snapped, and Ketchum fell, suffering gruesome injuries. The incident was so shocking that photos of it were banned from circulation. These images captured the morbid fascination of the crowd that had gathered to witness the event. Sometimes a single photo can change everything. The Fort Worth Five, also known as the Wild Bunch, were infamous outlaws led by Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Alongside Ben Kilpatrick, Kid Curry, and the Tall Texan, they terrorized the West with a string of daring robberies. In a strange twist of fate, the gang decided to pose for a group photo at a Fort Worth studio. Dressed in their finest clothes, they looked more like businessmen than criminals. But when the photographer displayed the picture in his shop window, a lawman passing by recognized them. The Pinkerton Detective Agency quickly copied and circulated the photo, turning the Wild Bunch into the most wanted men in the West. This single photograph sparked a nationwide manhunt, and the Wild Bunch became household names. While the image isn't explicitly banned, its role in bringing down one of the most notorious gangs in history makes it a fascinating piece of Wild West lore. Deadwood was a town of rough men and rougher times, but Molly Johnson rose above it all. During the Black Hills Gold Rush, Molly used her charm, wit, and business acumen to establish a thriving brothel in the heart of town. She carved out a place for herself in a world dominated by men, becoming one of Deadwood's most respected and feared figures. Molly's photograph shows a confident, polished woman, a stark contrast to the gritty environment of Deadwood. However, her image and story were often excluded from history books. Why? Because men in power felt threatened by her success and sought to erase her legacy. Despite constant scrutiny and criticism, Molly's establishment became known for its discretion and quality. Her story is a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of women in the Wild West, even if history tried to forget her. John Henry Doc Holliday was far from your typical Wild West figure. Born in 1851 in Griffin, Georgia, he was initially destined for a life as a dentist, following in his family's footsteps. He graduated from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery in 1872, and for a time he practiced in Georgia. However, life had other plans for Holliday. At just 23 years old, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a disease that at the time had no known cure. In search of a better climate, he moved west to the drier regions, hoping the change would help alleviate his symptoms. It was in Texas where Holliday's life took a dramatic turn. The gambling tables became his new battleground, where he developed a reputation as a sharp card player and an even sharper shooter. Holliday's quick wit and fiery temper made him a force to be reckoned with. His relationship with lawman Wyatt Earp solidified his place in Western lore, especially following the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. Although Holliday was technically a gambler and often lived on the fringes of society, he gained notoriety for his loyalty to Earp and his role in the showdown. Doc Holliday's image, captured in rare photographs, reveals a man who is both intelligent and dangerous. With piercing eyes and a calculated demeanor, he embodied the complex duality of a man who was part healer, part killer. Despite his pivotal role in Western history, his legacy was often overshadowed by more conventional outlaws. Still today, he remains one of the most iconic and enigmatic figures of the Wild West. Buffalo Bill Cody, William Buffalo Bill. Cody didn't just live in the Wild West, he sold it to the world. Before becoming the ultimate showman, Cody was a buffalo hunter, earning his nickname by taking down over 4,000 buffalo to feed railroad work. His hunting skills were unparalleled, but he knew there was more to the West than blood and bullets. That's when Buffalo Bill's Wild West show was born. Think of it as the original blockbuster, with trick shooters, reenactments of frontier battles, and even Native American performers. It wasn't just a performance. It was a phenomenon. Crowds from New York to Europe couldn't get enough. Cody's charisma made him a global superstar, and his show immortalized the Wild West as a place of heroism and adventure. While some criticized his romanticized portrayal of frontier life, there's no denying Buffalo Bill's role in shaping how we remember the Wild West. Billy the Kid, a name that echoes through the pages of Wild West history, became a household legend before he even turned 21. His story is as wild as the land he roamed, starting with a rough childhood that shaped his destiny. Orphaned at just 14, Billy found himself surviving by any means necessary, often by stealing. His first crime, swiping clothes from a Chinese laundry. It might sound small, but that moment set him on a path of rebellion, making him one of the most infamous figures in American history. By the time the Lincoln County War ignited in 1878, Billy was no longer just a petty thief. He was a seasoned outlaw with quick hands and dead-eye aim. His role in the conflict made him a symbol of the West's lawlessness. Though it's often debated, Billy's legendary claim of killing 21 men, one for each year of his life, became part of his charisma, a testament to his survival instincts and sharp gunmanship. Billy's life came to an abrupt end in 1881 when Sheriff Pat Garrett tracked him down and shot him dead in a moonlit room. But even in death, Billy the Kid became a legend, his story cemented in the lore of the Wild West. He lived fast, fought hard, and died young, forever embodying frontier life's chaotic, untamed spirit. Billy the Kid may have been a product of his time, but his story outlived it. If the Wild West had royalty, Davy Crockett would wear the crown. Davy Crockett, dubbed the King of the Wild Frontier, Crockett was a master marksman, a daring adventurer, and a defender of freedom. His tales are the stuff of legend, like when he allegedly killed 105 bears in one hunting season. Crockett wasn't just a hunter, though. He was a politician who served in Congress, where he fought for the rights of the common man. But he headed to Texas when politics soured, seeking a fresh start. It was there at the Alamo that Crockett became a martyr. Outnumbered and outgunned, he stood his ground until the bitter end. His death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a rallying cry. Remember the Alamo became a mantra, and Crockett symbolized bravery and sacrifice. He wasn't just a man, he was a movement. Jesse James wasn't just a typical outlaw of the Wild West. He was a living contradiction, both feared and admired. Born in 1847 in Missouri, Jesse's early life was marked by the turbulent days of the Civil War, where he fought as a Confederate guerrilla fighter. The brutal experiences of the war, including skirmishes and the constant struggle against Union forces, forged in him a deep sense of rebellion and resentment toward the established system. After the war ended, Jesse and his brother, Frank James, turned their attention to a different kind of warfare: bank and train robberies. Jesse's criminal exploits quickly made him a household name. He became the leader of the infamous James Younger Gang, a group known for daring robberies and spectacular heists. What set Jesse apart from other outlaws of the time was his charisma. During his robberies, he would often stop to give fiery speeches, condemning the corruption of the banking system and the government. These bold acts of defiance endeared him to many, especially in the South, where he was seen as a champion of the oppressed, fighting back against an unfair system. However, despite his Robin Hood-like image, Jesse needed to distribute his wealth more to those in need. He wasn't giving his stolen money to the poor or helping the downtrodden. His life was driven by personal greed and vengeance. As a result, the line between folk hero and ruthless criminal was razor-thin. Jesse's reign as an outlaw came to an ironic end in 1882 when he was betrayed by Robert Ford, a member of his gang. Ford shot Jesse in the back, forever cementing his legacy as one of the most famous and tragic figures of the Wild West. A saloon, a poker game, and a man with long flowing hair and a gaze that could cut glass. That's Wild Bill Hickok, one of the West's most infamous gunslingers. Hickok wasn't just quick on the draw, he was a showman, a lawman, and a gambler who lived on the edge. His reputation was forged in Springfield, Missouri, where he faced a gambler named Davis Tutt in what became the first recorded quick-draw duel. Hickok's bullet hit its mark, and his legend was born. From there, he served as a marshal in rowdy towns, using his sharp aim and sharper wit to keep the peace. But even legends have to fold. In 1876, Hickok was shot in the back while holding 2 aces and 2 eights, a hand now known as the dead man's hand. His death marked the end of an era, but his name still echoes in the annals of Wild West lore. Wyatt Earp wasn't looking for fame, but fame found him. A lawman, gambler, and occasional gunslinger, Earp became a household name after the legendary gunfight at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. The shootout was brief, just 30 seconds, but its impact was seismic. Earp, his brothers, and Doc Holliday faced off against the Clanton-McClory gang, leaving 3 outlaws dead. Wyatt emerged unscathed, cementing his status as a Wild West icon. But Wyatt's life wasn't all glory. He was a complicated man, often walking the fine line between law and lawlessness. His later years were marked by controversy, but he remained a symbol of frontier justice. Wyatt Earp's story reminds us that heroes are rarely perfect, but they are unforgettable. Forget the stereotypes of women in the Wild West. Calamity Jane broke every mold. Born Martha Jane Cannery. She was as tough as any cowboy, with a sharp tongue and a sharper aim. Known for her rough-and-tumble lifestyle, Jane was a scout, a gambler, and a drinker who didn't take nonsense from anyone. Jane's exploits were as wild as the West itself. She claimed to have fought alongside Wild Bill Hickok, saved a stagecoach full of passengers, and nursed smallpox victims back to health. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. Calamity Jane was larger than life. What set Jane apart was her humanity. Beneath the rugged exterior was a heart of gold. She cared deeply for the people around her, often giving what little she had to those in need. If you think all lawmen in the Wild West were cut from the same cloth, meet Bass Reeves. Born into slavery, Reeves escaped to freedom during the Civil War and went on to become one of the most effective U.S. Marshals in history. Reeves wasn't just good at his job, he was legendary. Over his 30-year career, he captured over 3,000 criminals, often bringing them alive, a rarity in those days. Known for his cunning disguises and unshakable moral code, Reeves outsmarted outlaws time and time again. But Reeves' story isn't just about justice and breaking barriers. As a black lawman in a racially divided America, he defied the odds. He earned respect from allies and enemies alike. The Wild West wasn't just a place of adventure, but a world full of hardships and horrors. These photos give us a raw glimpse into how life was back then. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in our next video.